The massive Imperial fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system without warning. Their ships looked like dark mountains floating in space, blocking out the distant stars. On Earth's Defense Command Center, Admiral Lane stood calmly watching the main screen, his weathered face showing no sign of fear. "They're trying to look impressive," he said to his crew, a slight smile on his face. Typical Empire behavior, always going for the dramatic entrance. The room stayed quiet but focused. None of the operators showed any panic, even as more Imperial ships kept appearing. They had trained for this day for years. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies," reported Lieutenant Baker from her communication station. "Should I put it through?" Admiral Lane straightened his uniform. "Let's hear what they have to say." The main screen flickered to life, showing High Commander Voss of the Galactic Empire. The alien looked almost human, except for the metallic sheen of his skin and eyes that glowed like purple crystals. "People of Earth," Voss announced in a booming voice, "you stand in the presence of the Galactic Empire. For 10,000 years, we have ruled the stars. Your primitive world now has the honor of joining our domain. Submit, and you will be granted the privileges of Imperial citizenship." Admiral Lane waited a few seconds before responding. He wanted the Empire to see that humans didn't rush into decisions out of fear. "High Commander Voss," he said finally, "on behalf of Earth and her colonies, I must decline your offer." He paused, noting how Voss's crystal eyes widened at the mention of colonies. "We're not interested in submission. However, we would be happy to discuss peaceful trade and cultural exchange." Voss laughed, the sound echoing through the command center speakers. "You misunderstand, Admiral. This is not a negotiation. Our scans show your technology level. You haven't even colonized your own moon properly. You have no faster-than-light travel. Your weapons are primitive. Submit, or we will take your world by force." The human crew members exchanged knowing looks. The Empire had fallen for their carefully crafted deception, just as planned. "High Commander," Lane said softly, his voice filled with genuine concern, "I don't think you understand the situation. We're not refusing out of pride or ignorance. We're warning you because we don't want to hurt your people." This made Voss pause. In 10,000 years of Imperial expansion, no species had ever responded quite like this. They usually either submitted immediately or made grand threats about their military might. "You dare to threaten the Empire?" Voss asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Not a threat," Lane replied. "A warning. You see, we've studied your empire for decades. We know your weapons, your tactics, your strengths and weaknesses. We chose to stay hidden because we hoped to meet peacefully one day. War is the last thing we want." "Decades," Voss scoffed. "Impossible. Our sensors would have detected your observation posts." Admiral Lane shook his head sadly. "The fact that you believe that proves my point. High Commander, humanity has spent most of its history at war with itself. Every major technology we've developed came from trying to find better ways to fight or defend ourselves. We've had thousands of years of practice at warfare, and we've learned one important lesson. The best wars are the ones you prevent." "You have one planetary cycle to submit," Voss declared, ignoring Lane's words. "After that, we will demonstrate the true power of the Empire." As the transmission cut off, Lieutenant Baker turned to Admiral Lane. "Sir, should we reveal our defensive capabilities now?" "Not yet," Lane replied, looking at the Imperial ships on the screen. "Let them think about what we said. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is doubt." He turned to face his crew. "Activate the hidden defense grid, but keep it cloaked. And send word to all our colonies to stay in stealth mode. Let's give the Empire one last chance to make the right choice." The crew worked quietly, knowing that the next day would either bring peace or prove why every human child learned the ancient saying, "Those who live by the sword should fear those who lived through 1,000 wars to finally choose peace." The Imperial delegation arrived at the designated meeting point on Earth's moon, their shuttle kicking up gray dust as it landed. Captain Morgan watched them through his helmet visor, standing perfectly still next to the small Earth outpost that the Empire thought was humanity's most advanced lunar base. They brought warriors. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Wilson, noted quietly over their private channel. She was right. The Imperial delegates wore ceremonial armor, and each carried what they thought were concealed weapons. "Let them keep their toys," Morgan replied. "It makes them feel safer." The Imperial group approached, led by a tall figure Morgan recognized as Commander Voss's second-in-command, Officer Bright. The name was a poor translation of his Imperial title, but it would do. "Welcome to Luna Base," Morgan said through his suit's external speakers. "We appreciate you accepting our invitation for this demonstration." Bright looked around at the simple metal buildings and outdated equipment carefully placed in view. "This is what you wanted to show us? Primitive lunar habitats?" Morgan smiled behind his visor. "Not exactly. We wanted to show you why we gave that warning." He pressed a button on his wrist computer. "Look up, please." The Imperial delegation raised their heads. Above them, the black sky suddenly filled with lights as hundreds of advanced human ships dropped their stealth fields. They had been there the whole time, completely invisible to Imperial sensors. "Impossible," Bright whispered. "Our scans showed nothing." "That's correct," Morgan said. "They still show nothing. Here's why we wanted to talk." He pressed another button. A holographic display appeared, showing footage from Earth's history. "This is World War I," Morgan explained as images of trenches and early tanks played out. "This is World War II." The images shifted to more advanced weapons. Korean War, Vietnam War, Middle East conflicts, each showing more and more advanced technology. The Imperial delegation watched in silence as centuries of human warfare played before them. "Every war taught us something," Morgan continued. "Every conflict pushed us to innovate. While your empire expanded through space, claiming easy victories over younger civilizations, humanity was learning the hard way. We fought ourselves. We nearly destroyed ourselves. And then we learned from it." He waved his hand, and the hologram changed to show modern human military technology. "These are our current weapons, the ones we hoped we'd never need to use again." Bright stepped forward. "You expect us to believe these recordings? This could all be fabricated." Morgan nodded to Wilson. "Lieutenant, would you demonstrate for our guests?" Wilson pulled out what looked like a simple metal cube. "This device neutralizes energy weapons," she explained. "You can try to fire your hidden weapons now. They won't work." The Imperial guards immediately reached for their concealed guns, but when they pulled the triggers, nothing happened. "How?" Bright demanded. "These are top-of-the-line Imperial weapons. We've had counters to energy weapons for decades," Morgan explained. "We developed them for our own wars, long before we knew about your empire. Would you like to see what else we've learned?" He pressed another button. In the distance, a piece of the moon's surface shimmered and vanished, revealing a massive underground complex filled with advanced ships and weapons. "That's just one base," Morgan said quietly. "One of our smaller ones. We have these throughout the solar system. All hidden. All ready. Not because we want war, but because our history taught us to always be prepared." The Imperial delegation stood in shocked silence. "Go back to your fleet," Morgan continued. "Tell them what you've seen. Tell them that we weren't bluffing when we warned them to run. Tell them that humanity doesn't want to fight. But if forced, we will win. We always have." As the Imperial delegation hurried back to their shuttle, Lieutenant Wilson turned to Morgan. "Do you think they'll listen this time?" Morgan watched the shuttle take off. "They'd better, because what we showed them today, that wasn't even our best technology. That was just enough to make them think twice." In orbit above them, the massive Imperial fleet suddenly seemed much less impressive against the backdrop of hundreds of advanced human ships that had been invisible just hours before. Director Wells stood in the hidden observation post on Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon, watching the Imperial scout ships searching the system. They had been looking for human colonies for 3 days now, and they hadn't found a single one. "They're getting frustrated," reported her aide, watching the sensor displays. "2 more Imperial ships just arrived from their main fleet." Wells nodded, taking a sip from her coffee. The observation post was actually a massive complex hidden beneath Europa's ice, home to over 50,000 people. But to Imperial scanners, it looked like nothing but frozen water and rock. Her computer beeped with an incoming transmission. "This is Wells," she answered. "Director," Admiral Lane's voice came through clearly. "The Empire has requested another meeting. This time they want to see our colonies. They think we're bluffing about having them." Wells smiled. "Should we show them?" "Yes," Lane replied. "It's time. I'm sending Officer Bright and his team to your location. Give them the tour they'll never forget." An hour later, Wells watched the Imperial shuttle land on Europa's icy surface. The visitors wore environmental suits, clearly expecting to find nothing but a frozen wasteland. "Welcome to Europa Colony," Wells said through the radio as she walked out to meet them. "Please, follow me." She led them to what looked like a simple research pod stuck in the ice. Officer Bright was about to make a dismissive comment when Wells pressed her hand against the pod's surface. The ice around them suddenly became transparent, revealing the massive city beneath their feet. "Impossible," Bright whispered, staring at the underground metropolis stretching for kilometers in every direction. "Our scans." "Your scans show what we want them to show," Wells explained. "We've had cloaking technology since before we left Earth's atmosphere. It was one of the first things we developed after nearly destroying ourselves in our last World War." She led them to an elevator hidden in the ice. As they descended into the colony, the Imperial delegation saw countless humans going about their daily lives in the hidden city. "This is just one colony," Wells continued. "We have similar bases on Mars, Venus, Mercury, and several asteroids. All hidden, all self-sufficient, all protected by technology your empire hasn't even dreamed of yet." They reached the main level, and Wells led them to a large window overlooking an underground ocean where massive ships were being constructed. "Those are our newest vessels," she explained. "Powered by quantum drives, capable of traveling between stars in hours instead of weeks like your ships. We've had this technology for decades, but we chose to stay hidden, to watch and learn about the galaxy before revealing ourselves." "Why?" Bright asked, his voice shaking slightly. "If you have all this power, why hide it?" "Because we learned the hard way that showing off power only leads to war," Wells replied. "We wanted to understand the galaxy first, to find peaceful ways to interact. We watched your empire expand, studied your technology, learned your weaknesses, not to exploit them, but to avoid conflict." She led them to a control room where screens showed live feeds from thousands of cloaked observation posts throughout Imperial space. "We've been watching you for 50 years, Wells said quietly. "We know every fleet movement, every secret base, every weakness in your defenses. Not because we want to attack you, but because our history taught us that knowledge prevents wars better than weapons do." The Imperial delegation stared at the screens in shock, realizing that humans have been living among them, studying them, all this time. "Go back to your leaders," Wells said. "Tell them what you've seen. Tell them that humanity has been ready for war since before we met, but we're choosing peace. Tell them that we don't want to fight, but if they force us to, they'll be facing an enemy that has spent centuries perfecting the art of war while they were busy collecting easy victories." As the Imperial delegation left, Wells turned to her aide. "Send word to all colonies. It's time to end the deception. Let them see who we really are." Across the solar system, human cities and fleets began dropping their cloaking fields, revealing a civilization far more advanced and widespread than the Empire had imagined possible. Commander Stone stood at his post in the Earth Defense Command Center, watching as 5,000 Imperial warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They filled Earth's orbit like angry metal wasps, their weapons already charging. They really didn't listen, he said quietly, shaking his head. The Empire had decided that humanity's demonstrations of power were tricks, illusions created to hide weakness. Now they would learn the hard way. "Sir," called out Operator Green from her station, "Imperial ships are launching fighters. They're starting their attack pattern." Stone nodded calmly. "Send the evacuation signal. Get all civilian ships behind the defense grid." The massive Imperial fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked toward Earth, each powerful enough to level a city. High Commander Voss watched from his flagship, expecting to see the planet's surface burn. Instead, every single shot disappeared about 1,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface, absorbed by an invisible shield that suddenly shimmered into view. The shield covered the entire planet like a beautiful blue bubble. "Quantum shield activated," reported Green. "Zero damage. All shots absorbed and converted to power for our defense systems. Shield strength actually increasing." Stone pressed a button on his command console. "High Commander Voss." He broadcast on all frequencies. "This is your final warning. Withdraw your forces now." Voss's angry face appeared on the main screen. "Your shields cannot hold forever. The Empire has never failed to conquer a world. Your tricks and illusions will not save you." "They're not tricks," Stone replied sadly. "And those weren't illusions. We tried to warn you. Now we have to demonstrate why." He turned to his crew. "Activate the defense grid. Non-lethal measures only. Show them what they're really dealing with." Around Earth, hundreds of hidden defense satellites dropped their cloaking fields. They were small, simple-looking devices that the Empire's scans had dismissed as space debris. Now they came to life. "Satellites powered," reported Green. "Ready on your command." The Imperial fleet launched another wave of attacks. This time, instead of just absorbing the shots, the quantum shield sent the energy back, transformed into precisely targeted pulses that disabled the weapons systems on each attacking ship. "What is this?" Voss demanded as reports of failing weapons flooded in. "What have you done?" "We're not trying to destroy your ships," Stone explained. "Just like we weren't trying to threaten you before. Those satellites aren't weapons. They're part of a system we built to prevent war. They can disable any weapon without harming the crew." To demonstrate, the defense satellites fired soft pulses of energy that spread through the Imperial fleet. One by one, their engines shut down, leaving them floating helplessly in space. "Impossible," Voss whispered. "Our systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. They can't just be turned off like this." "Your systems are advanced," Stone agreed, "but you developed them for conquest. We developed ours to end wars before they began. Every weapon you have, we found a way to neutralize decades ago. We had to. It was the only way to prevent our own weapons from destroying us." Across Earth's orbit, the mighty Imperial fleet hung powerless. Their most destructive weapons have been rendered useless by defenses they couldn't even understand. "Listen carefully," Stone continued. "In 10 minutes, your ships will get power back. When they do, you have a choice. You can leave in peace, or you can keep attacking. But if you choose to attack—" He paused, letting his words sink in. "Well, remember that what you've seen is just our defensive technology. You haven't seen our weapons yet. And trust me, you don't want to." As if to emphasize his point, the quantum shield pulsed once, and every single piece of Imperial scanning equipment stopped working at the same moment. "Your move, Commander Voss," Stone said quietly. "Choose wisely." The command center fell silent as they waited for the Empire's response, wondering if humanity's message had finally gotten through. Major Thompson walked silently through the halls of the Empire's most secure military base on their capital world. None of the Imperial guards could see him or his team. Their stealth suits made them completely invisible to every sensor and scanning device the Empire possessed. "This is too easy," whispered Lieutenant Rogers through their secure comm channel. "Their security is a joke." Thompson smiled beneath his stealth suit's mask. The Empire had never needed better security. Until now. They had ruled the galaxy so long that they'd forgotten what it meant to face a real enemy. "Remember," Thompson said quietly to his team, "no casualties. We're here to send a message, not start a war." They reached the base's central command room. Imperial officers sat at their stations, monitoring screens that showed their fleet movements across the galaxy. They had no idea they were being watched. "Begin Phase 1, Thompson ordered. His team moved into position, each member approaching a different computer terminal. At Thompson's signal, they all placed small devices on the terminals, devices that looked like simple metal dots no bigger than a fingernail. "Phase 1 complete," Rogers reported. "Ready for Phase 2. Thompson pressed a button on his wrist computer. Suddenly, every screen in the command center changed. The Imperial officers jumped in surprise as their fleet movements were replaced by a single message, repeated in every language of the Empire. "Your systems are compromised. We can shut them down at any time. This is your final warning." Alarms began blaring throughout the base. Imperial guards rushed into the command center, but they couldn't see the human team standing right next to them. "Sir," one of the Imperial officers called out to his commander, "all our defense systems are offline. Every base in the sector is reporting the same thing." Thompson watched as panic spread through the room. The Empire's military had never experienced anything like this. Their mighty warships, their advanced weapons, their secure bases, all could be disabled by an enemy they couldn't even see. "Phase 3, Thompson ordered. His team moved again, this time placing larger devices around the room. When activated, these would reveal how the humans had entered the base, showing the Empire just how vulnerable they really were. "Should we tell them about their eye?" Rogers asked over the comm. Thompson nodded. "Do it." Every screen changed again. This time, they showed proof that the Empire's military artificial intelligence, the system they relied on for all their strategy and planning, had been compromised months ago. Humans had been inside their most secure networks since before first contact. "Impossible," the Imperial commander shouted, staring at the screens. "No one can hack the Imperial Eye. Its defenses are perfect." "Nothing is perfect," Thompson said, finally deactivating his stealth suit. The Imperial officers jumped back in shock as he and his team appeared in their midst. "We learned that lesson centuries ago. Everything has a weakness. The trick is finding it before your enemy does." Guards raised their weapons, but Thompson just smiled. "Those won't work. We disabled them when we entered the base, just like we disabled your ships, just like we could disable every piece of Imperial military technology if we wanted to." "Who are you people?" the Imperial commander asked, his voice shaking. "We're humans," Thompson replied. "We spent thousands of years fighting ourselves, learning every possible way to wage war. When we finally made peace with each other, we didn't forget those lessons. We just hoped we'd never need them again." He reactivated his stealth suit, his team disappearing with him. Their voices echoed through the command center one last time. "You have 24 hours to withdraw all Imperial forces from human space. After that, we stop being nice. And trust us, you haven't seen anything yet." The Imperial officers stared at their useless screens, realizing that the humans hadn't been bluffing. They had just been hoping to avoid using everything they had learned from millennia of warfare. As Thompson's team left the base as easily as they had entered it, he sent one final message to Earth. "Mission accomplished." They finally understand what they're dealing with. Admiral Reed stood on the bridge of the Human Defense Force flagship, Peacekeeper, watching as the largest Imperial fleet ever assembled filled the space before him. The Empire had gathered every ship they could spare, over 20,000 warships from across their territory. "They still think numbers will make a difference," Reed said quietly, looking at the massive fleet. His own fleet consisted of just 100 ships, all that humanity had chosen to reveal so far. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, High Commander Voss is broadcasting to all ships, both Imperial and human. Put him through, Reed ordered. Let's hear what they have to say. Voss's face appeared on the main screen, his expression stern but worried. This is your final chance to surrender, he announced. We have assembled the greatest fleet in Imperial history. You cannot hope to stand against our combined might. Reed sighed. After everything humanity had shown them, they still didn't understand. He pressed a button to respond. High Commander Voss, he said calmly, I want you to look carefully at my next transmission. This is what you're really facing. Reed nodded to his communications officer. Suddenly, every Imperial ship received detailed scans showing the true extent of human military power. Hidden fleets larger than the Empire's entire navy. Weapons platforms that could disable stars. Defense systems that could redirect the energy of entire galaxies. This is impossible, Voss whispered, staring at the data. These readings, they can't be real. They're real, Reed confirmed. Everything we've shown you so far. Our quantum shields, our stealth technology, our ability to shut down your weapons. That was less than 10% of our actual capability. The bridge fell silent as Reed continued. We didn't want to show you this. We hoped you would understand our warnings without needing to see everything. But you kept pushing, kept refusing to believe that a younger species could be more advanced than the Empire. On every Imperial ship, screens began showing footage from Earth's history. But this time, it wasn't just wars. It showed how each conflict pushed human technology forward, how the drive to survive made humanity advance faster than any other known species. While your empire spent 10,000 years conquering easy targets, Reed explained, humanity spent that time surviving war after war, crisis after crisis. We nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times. Each time, we came back stronger, smarter, more advanced. He pressed another button, and the space around his small fleet suddenly lit up as thousands of hidden human ships dropped their cloaking fields. They had been there the entire time, waiting and watching. This is the choice before you now, Reed said firmly. You can turn around, go home, and accept our original offer of peaceful coexistence, or you can attack and learn firsthand why every human child learns to value peace above all else. Voss stared at the massive human fleet that had appeared from nowhere. How? He asked finally. How did you advance so far without anyone knowing? Because we learned the most important lesson any species can learn, Reed replied. True strength isn't about showing off your power. It's about knowing when not to use it. He gestured at the endless ranks of human ships surrounding the Imperial fleet. We could have conquered your empire years ago. We could have taken your worlds, destroyed your fleets, erased every trace of Imperial power from the galaxy. But we chose a different path. We chose to wait, to watch, to hope for peace. The Imperial fleet hung motionless in space as Voss considered his options. Around them, more human ships continued to appear as they dropped their cloaking fields, revealing an armada that dwarfed anything the Empire had ever seen. The choice is yours, High Commander, Reed said quietly. But choose carefully, because if you force us to fight, you'll learn why we spent so many centuries trying to avoid war. Ambassador Gray walked through the grand halls of the Imperial Palace, her footsteps echoing on the polished floor. 6 months had passed since the Empire's fleet had faced humanity's true power, and things had changed dramatically. The Emperor will see you now, announced an Imperial guard, opening massive golden doors. Inside the throne room, Emperor Voss, formerly High Commander, stood waiting. After the confrontation with humanity's fleet, the previous emperor had stepped down, recognizing that the Empire needed new leadership for a new age. Ambassador Gray, Voss greeted her warmly. Welcome to the Imperial capital. I trust your journey was comfortable. Very, Gray replied with a smile. Your people have been most welcoming, especially since we started sharing our transportation technology. They walked together to a large window overlooking the capital city. Below them, humans and Imperial citizens worked side by side, sharing knowledge and culture. The sight would have been unthinkable just months ago. I must admit, Voss said, watching the scene below, when we first encountered Earth, we thought we knew everything about warfare and power. He shook his head. We were like children playing with toys, weren't we? Gray considered his words carefully. Not children, she replied. Just fortunate. Your empire never faced the kinds of challenges that shaped humanity. You never had to learn the hardest lessons. On the streets below, a group of Imperial engineers watched in amazement as a human technician demonstrated quantum shield technology. The Empire was learning rapidly, but always under careful guidance to ensure the knowledge would be used wisely. That's what I wanted to discuss today, Voss said, turning to face her. Your people have shown us more than just advanced technology. You've shown us a better way to use power. Gray nodded. Around them, the palace itself was being upgraded with human technology. Not weapons, but tools for communication, healthcare, and education. These were the real gifts humanity had chosen to share first. Tell me, Voss asked, how did humanity maintain its unity after achieving such power? The Empire has ruled through force for 10,000 years, but you chose a different path. We had to, Gray explained. Our wars taught us that power without wisdom destroys itself. Each conflict showed us new ways to fight, but also new reasons to seek peace. She paused, looking out at the city. That's why we waited so long to reveal ourselves to the galaxy. We needed to be sure we could handle the responsibility. Voss walked to his desk and pressed a button, displaying a hologram of the galaxy. Across it, points of light showed where human and Imperial cooperation was already changing things for the better. My advisors tell me that in just 6 months, systems under joint human Imperial administration have seen a 50% increase in quality of life, he said. Poverty, disease, conflict, all declining rapidly. That's what happens when you use technology to help people instead of controlling them, Gray replied. Something we learned the hard way. Voss smiled. Something he rarely did before meeting humans. The Empire spent millennia conquering the galaxy, he said. But you've done more to improve it in half a year than we did in all that time. Because we're working together, Gray pointed out. That's another lesson from our history. Unity is stronger than dominance. Outside the palace, a human ship descended from the sky, its quantum drive glowing softly. It carried teachers, doctors, and scientists, the real agents of change in this new era. So Voss said, what's next for our peoples? Gray smiled. That's up to us to decide together. But first, she pulled out a small device and set it on the desk. It projected a map of unexplored space. There's a whole universe out there, waiting to be discovered. And this time, we can explore it not as conquerors or warriors, but as partners in peace. Partners, Voss repeated the word thoughtfully. I like that. As they looked out at the bustling city, both leaders knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity had warned the Empire to run, but instead, they had learned to walk together toward a better future.